Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga Show, brought to you by Over the Bar. We're here this evening for our last match week review of the season, match week 34. We're just going to be dining in to what basically happened on Saturday in the Bundesliga, last games of the season. Before we get into any of that, gents, how are we doing? Me and Mark kind of know that we're kind of recovering from Saturday's adventures. Peter, how did you find Saturday's action?
Well, I'm good and exhausted. As I was mentioning to you before the broadcast, I also was covering the Zweite and the Dritte Bundesliga conclusions for Bulinews this weekend, in addition to writing that mammoth column on all the simultaneous kickoffs. So, yeah, we're tired, and I'll plagiarize a little bit from Mark and say that, yeah, we didn't quite get the results that we wanted. All three of us predicted that Dortmund would win the title last week, and all three of us have been proven incorrect. So that is very much the case. I imagine you're a little bit disappointed as well, gents, are you not?
Yeah, to say the least, really. Yeah, I think we all hoped, we all thought it was what the Bundesliga Republic wanted. I think everybody was ready for a new champion, and it seemed like the stage was set. I think everybody thought it was a shoe-in. Obviously, Bellingham picking up that knock in the run-up to the match didn't exactly help, did it? Let's be honest. But everybody thought they'd still have more than enough against a Mainz side who didn't have that much to play for, really. But, yeah, I think for me, I woke up on Sunday morning. I'll be honest, I was pretty gutted, really. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, it was enjoyable because all 9 games were happening at the same time. Every game had something riding on it, the last 10 minutes or so were so tense. It was at times it was a hard watch, but lo and behold, first and foremost, we have to say congratulations to Bayern for collecting yet another Bundesliga title. Absolutely, they did the business on the last day of the season, and that is ultimately what wins you titles. The Musiala goal. But anyway, we'll come into all of that. Before we do get going, I can see there's a few comments in the chat already. Just to say, please do smash a like on this video. Obviously, I was looking back at match week 34. Comment along as we've already seen a few people doing. Make sure you smash that subscribe button and enjoy all the end of season content that we've still got to come. We may well be doing some of the playoff match between my dearest VfB and Hamburg, as well as a couple of the end of season shows, which are always good fun. And also just to note, we're still in partnership with Bundesliga Boxes, fantastic company that have been with us for a long time now and throughout this journey. And please do make sure you check them out on Twitter, as well as Bulinews, who have been with us also for a long time. And thanks to Runa and co, who've been helping us out with the fantasy football show, which obviously came to a climax. We weren't able to do as many as we wanted to towards the end of the season, but it was fantastic fun as well this season. So just a nod to all those parties involved. Right then, gents, we're gonna do this in order. So we'll do title race, then we'll talk a little bit about the relegation race. Then, of course, we'll come to top 4, in which obviously all the games were happening at the same time, simultaneously. If we're starting with the title race, this kind of didn't flip-flop as much as some of the other perhaps results during the day, because obviously Bayern went ahead very early on thanks to a very fine Kingsley Coman strike after being set up by Leroy Sané. That put Bayern in control of their game and their 3 points that they wanted to collect. At the same time, in Dortmund, Mainz not long after took the lead, and then obviously, if we then concentrate now or for now on the Dortmund game, because probably the game that had the most, well, I'd say the most things happening, but there's certainly a fair amount going on late in the Bayern game. First off, reactions to the 2 Mainz goals, chaps. 2 well-worked goals, set piece, Dortmund being punished at the near post, and then a good counter by Mainz, good curled cross by Lee, put away by Onisiwo, who had completed 10 Bundesliga goals for the season. I think it's the first time he's ever done that. So congrats to him on a fine season. And that put Dortmund behind the 8-ball somewhat mark. And, we were watching it. It was hard for them to come back into it after that.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations to Mainz, first of all. I mean, they came out firing. They obviously, Bo Svensson's men, we talked a lot about their motivation going into the game. They had absolutely nothing to play for at all. Even Conference League was off the cards. But obviously, Bo Svensson had said to his men, this is your chance to be party poopers, so to speak. And that's exactly what they did, and people will remember them for that. I mean, it's been a fantastic season for Mainz, by the way, and credit to them. But yeah, this was maybe one of their kind of crowning glories, really, the fact they did stop Dortmund from winning the title. And yeah, unfortunately for everyone else. But yeah, as you say, Onisiwo was amazing in the early parts of the game. He was fantastic. The first goal, I mean, they've got to be preventing that ultimately. It's just straight from a corner. I mean, the likes of Sula just gets completely lost. And obviously Olsen just manages to kind of sneak that header into the near corner. We've talked about Dortmund not defending corners well pretty much throughout the season, especially in the Hinrunde, that was a problem. And it struck again just at the one moment that you didn't want it to. And obviously that combined with the early goal in Köln as well for Bayern, I mean, that's just, that's brutal. Within 15 minutes, you've already got Bayern winning and Dortmund losing. So you already need a turnaround just after 15 minutes. And the Seb Haller moment, I mean, yeah, we've talked in recent weeks how good he's been. He's been the talisman in recent weeks, and he's really shown his quality. He's brought other players into play, and obviously he couldn't put the penalty. It was a good save by Darman, but you've got to be putting those chances away. And then obviously the second goal through Onisiwo, which was almost saved as well. It just kind of kissed the post on the way in. I think I said to you, Rory, on the watch long, I just said, Edin Terzic at halftime is just going to think, please, if he could turn back time 45 minutes, he would have done it then. And if he had one chance in his life to turn back 45 minutes, he would have given back that first 45 in this game. I mean, Adeyemi going off injured as well. It was just a catastrophe, that first half, truly. And that's ultimately what cost him the title for me, really, that first half, really.
Yeah, Peter, we'll come to you on this because obviously... nice to have your thoughts on how Dortmund tried to get themselves back into the game. Obviously, they weren't able to call upon Jude Bellingham. Obviously, if he was fit enough, I'm sure he would have dragged himself onto the pitch. The substitutions that Edin Terzic did make, some were more effective than others. I think Gio Reyna and Duranville did make a difference when they came off the bench, and it added a bit more, directness. They were taking their men on, beating men, getting in and around the penalty area a lot more. But unfortunately for Dortmund, it was a little bit too little, too late.
Indeed. Well, I thank you for bringing up Gio and Duranville, because I thought that they were both quite impressive off the bench, and that's a good sign for Dortmund's future. And they do have a future. We can get into why they have a future, how Bayern are still on the ropes and in administrative disarray as well. This was not a match in which I believe that Dortmund played especially poorly. Of course, you have a missed penalty. There was some slight controversy. I believe Guerrero was body checked in the box by Martin.
Yeah, he was.
Which could have potentially been a penalty as well. I thought that the substitutions were effective. I thought that Rafael Guerrero, in what is his farewell match, played absolutely brilliantly. I thought, with the exception of some of the defending in the box on the goals, Kahn, Hummels, and Süle were absolutely fantastic. They were facing a very, very good Mainz side. One without Ludovic Ajorque, who was, I believe, suspended for this one, but also did not start last week. But Onisiwo was just excellent on the counter. Of course, I mean, you saw that there were many counters that Mainz could have finished off to polish the game off. Yeah. But sometimes, Lee or potentially Kua didn't quite have the finishing quality. But, I mean, it was a good team. Svensson had his preferred midfield duo back in place, Barrero, and one of my personal favorite players to have a nickname for, Dominic Hardcore, playing with the face mask. And Stach, as we've mentioned Stach so many times this season, particularly when he's playing a more advanced role. Sometimes it hasn't always worked out, but on this day, I think he played particularly well. Substitutions were solid, bringing on Youssoufa Moukoko for Marius Wolf at the half, having Moukoko work as a short striker, moving Guerrero back to left back. You can't help but call it a choke, particularly in light of the missed penalty. But it was a gut-wrenching match to watch them lose, considering the fact that they played well for large portions of it. It was very much a match of patterns. Svensson was sort of in a Catenaccio bolt lock for the second half, so all they could really do was just keep lofting these crosses into the box. And there were too many Mainz bodies for it to be effective. Hummels missed several good chances towards the end. But you were asking a lot of him to time his headers perfectly in those various instances. I think, I'll say something about Bellingham. He was the team's biggest cheerleader. There was an early injury timeout where Bellingham was throwing water bottles to every pitch, if you caught that. And I think that, everybody was in tears afterwards. Bellingham famously pushed the broadcast camera away so that it wouldn't film him, it wouldn't document him being in tears. Dortmund's course now is probably very clear. Bellingham, I don't see him playing for Dortmund ever again. This is their opportunity. They absolutely must sell him in this transfer window for some 120 million euros. And secure their future and hopefully leapfrog Bayern financially. So as I was saying at the beginning of this rant of mine, Dortmund do have a future. They have a very, very bright future, despite what happened this weekend, in my opinion.
Yeah, and maybe that's something that we can come to when we do our team season reviews a little bit later on in the weeks to come and stuff like that. But if we're just reflecting on match week 34, then I think there's already been some chat in the comment section from Balin, from the DNNY, presumably Danny perhaps. But yeah, the choke was it wasn't inevitable, but after the 2-0 scoreline, it was fairly inevitable what was going to happen. But Dortmund kept on going till the end, didn't they? The Schüller goal, obviously deflection in mind, he did very well to bring it down actually to make it 2-2. But after that, in the madness that was ensuing, I can't remember another clear-cut chance after the Schüller goal. I think they had pretty much run out of time by then. And if we then kind of skip over to where the Bayern players were watching, they were watching on a player's phone, I think, at the end on the pitch in Köln. Obviously, where they had just about done the business in what was a match where Köln matched them up quite well for a good period of the match and were good on the counter. Well, and just matched up with Bayern in general, I would say. Obviously, Bayern thought they had got a crucial second goal just before half-time. A good bit of play by Gnabry, which released Leroy Sané, and he finished very aptly with his left foot, curling it inside the near post. And you're thinking, right, well, 2-0 Bayern half-time, 2-0 Dortmund losing half-time, we're already done and dusted. But lo and behold, they go back for the handball. So I think that was fairly given or taken away from Bayern, meaning it was still only 1-0. And as the game developed, obviously, again, maybe nerves to a certain extent from Bayern. I presume they would have known at half-time the scoreline in Dortmund. So it kind of works either way around. But even with the suspect, I'd say suspect, I've seen it a few times now, the handball. Be interesting to hear what you both think when we come to this, which obviously led to the leveler on 81 minutes. Looked like then Dortmund was somehow going to do it despite the fact that they were losing. I think it obviously then would have been 2-1. They were losing at the time, but because of the draw, they would have won it by a point. Lo and behold, Köln lost the ball high up. I think it was Chabot, maybe. And then I can't remember exactly who it was. Was it Sane who had the first chance? So he was denied first and foremost. A great save to keep it at 1-1. Then the ball is recovered, comes out to Musiala, spins on it and does what he does best and scores the biggest goal of his young career to send, obviously, the away fans into rapturous celebration. I mean, as a game, I suppose, chaps, we're not trying to review their entire season right now, but Bayern, again, they just got over the line, but that's something that they are just used to. They were presented with the chance and they took it, simple as Mark, and they've ended up winning the league title on goal difference. Amazing scenes for Bayern, and, well, what else can you say, but they just know how to get it done.
Yeah, I think in many ways it was a case that it summed up Bayern Munich's season, really. I mean, they almost managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, even for about the 20th time this season, really. It's been such a topsy-turvy race, hasn't it? And obviously Dortmund were trailing for long, long periods of that match, pretty much until right at the end when the game was pretty much irrelevant anyway. But Bayern looked like they were in control of that match for the first half. I thought they played a really good first half. They were a bit unlucky with that Sané disallowed goal. The first goal was real quality, by the way, as well. The Coman strike, that was a beautiful goal. I think I said to you on the watch along, Rory, that they needed that early goal just to settle the nerves and put the pressure on Dortmund, and it worked. It definitely worked because 15 minutes after that, Dortmund were 2-0 down. So, yeah, I think we can safely say that worked. But their game management was poor again, really, for Bayern, to be honest. And, they didn't get that second goal. And in the end, for me, it is a bit of a soft penalty. But, the second half of the Bundesliga, we've seen a lot more of them given, really, in recent weeks, the handballs, haven't we? So it kind of does go in line with what we've seen recently. If you're a Bayern fan, you're furious. You're just thinking it's not going to be our year when they give that penalty. Obviously, it's really well put away by Ljubicic. And yeah, at that point, again, it looks like maybe Köln can grab onto a point and then stay, win the title. But to be honest, we've not seen a lot of classic Bayern Munich this season, but the late goal was classic Bayern Munich, basically. They punished the Dortmund draw. They did get the result that they needed, and they win the title on goal difference. But, the scenes that we see after the match with Salihamidzic and Kahn sacked just I think it was a matter of minutes, actually, officially, after the full-time result. That shows what the Bayern Munich board there is saying, basically, is that, yes, you won the title, but that was not good enough at all this season, basically. They failed to win 13 games. Even a lot of the wins have been unconvincing, to say the least, and this game also was unconvincing. But, scrappy wins away at Freiburg when they didn't really create very much. There's been so many instances where it's not really been good enough from Bayern this season, but they have won the title. They shouldn't have been able to win the title. There's no question about that. But they have managed to do it. And, it is 11 out of 11, 11 straight years. But basically what the Bayern board have done there, for me, the reason why they fired them so soon after full time is to show, yes, we're champions, but that was not good enough, basically.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on a comment from that's in the chat already, and it's something that I'll throw to you, Peter, and I'll just bring up on screen now. So, German soccer getting damaged with Bayern keep on winning the league, such as the TV deal. I'd definitely say so, with the first place team getting around 90 million and then the last place team, I think it goes on here, getting around 30 million euros. You can't expect to have a competitive league at any point. And the competitiveness of the Bundesliga has been a conversation that myself and Mark have had on shows before, in Q&A shows, and is it damaging for the Bundesliga that Bayern keep on winning and things like that. So, coming straight back to that point, Peter, I think it's quite an interesting one that, again, we've had conversations about previously, but just wanted to pick up on that and maybe get your thoughts on that, and we can get a response in return in terms of the comment that's come in as well.
Well, the new TV deal, which was negotiated in 2020, does make things a little bit more equitable in terms of revenue distribution. I've written many articles on that. Those are the kind of articles that don't get a lot of hits, but I enjoy writing them anyway. That's when you work for a site, you get to write your nice little nerdy niche articles, and every so often you got to take one for the team. You're like, here's another transfer rumor that I have to write about. That's probably never going to happen. But I think the TV deal that Christian Seifert, who was a very competent chief executive officer of the DFL for 16 years, negotiated, did make things a little bit more equitable. We were talking a little bit last week about the new investor model that Hans-Joachim Watzke wanted to introduce. He was joined by, among others, Dirk Zingler, the president of Union Berlin. And the two of them were trying to spin off a 12% share in the corporation for the DFL, which runs the two top football flights, and make it ready for a investment firm, one that was to bid for it. BlackRock was there were several U.S. Investment firms that were looking into it. That measure was defeated in large part because of the opposition from Christian Keller, the chief of sporting executive of FC Köln, who recently ascended to the board. I think that this very well may be the last Bayern title. And I base some of the reasoning, I talked about a lot of technical things. I base some of the reasoning for that. You recall when I talked about how Dortmund need to liquefy some of their assets. I hate to think of players as assets, but that's the way that it is. I mean, they are human beings, but they need to liquefy. Just saying the words "liquefy" Jude Bellingham makes me feel a little dirty. I don't know why. They have to get him sold so that they can get 100+ million or so in the coffers, and then spend it smartly under an executive like Sebastian Kehl. Mm-hmm. There are other clubs in the league who have plenty of financial backing. Unfortunately, these are not necessarily clubs that Germans would like to see win the title. They are the company clubs, Leipzig, Wolfsburg, and Leverkusen. But they're not hurting for cash. They can spend competitively to compete with Bayern München. I think that, when you talk about 11 straight years of a title, naturally this is disappointing. Think of the younger generation who have never known another champion outside of Bayern. This is not something that we're necessarily happy about. But Germans remain very, very proud of their league. The TV deal that Seifert negotiated brings a lot of extra money into German football, and it brings it a larger range and a larger global audience. And the new TV deal, that's one of the reasons that the DFL sacked their former boss Hopfen, because she was dragging her feet on negotiating the new one. There's a new one due to be negotiated this year, which will be more equitable and will pump more money into German football. I'd have to say, on balance, I was not necessarily happy to see the investor model measure defeated last Wednesday, because I thought it would have been good for German football. I thought that just simply spinning off a portion of the corporation that runs German football, bringing a little bit of extra money in, distributing it fairly. They had a great plan to particularly bolster youth academies of various clubs. I think Germans are sometimes a little bit too paranoid when it comes to change, and that's the case in football. That's the case when it comes to cookies on websites, or giving your personal data away, or actually, as a Stuttgart fan, you can recall the data affair. Germans can sometimes be a little bit too averse to change, and when we do try to implement changes in German football, 50+1 is sacred. This is absolutely sacred. We're not getting rid of 50+1. We have guardrails in to protect it in every last reform that we have. So I think that vote in Frankfurt this week maybe bothers me a little bit more than Bayern winning the 11th title, because it was still an exciting season that came down to the last day. I think we have a lot to look forward to next season. And if I'm going to draw one positive out of Bayern's victory, I'm very, very happy that Jamal Musiala, who has been in dreadful form ever since the World Cup, and his confidence has been shaken. I'm glad that he got a chance to be the hero, because he did select us over England to play for. So, hopefully I haven't put everybody to sleep with this, but I mean, I offer my opinions on some of the reforms that are going on in German football, and I think that there will be more. You're not going to get me to say that my league isn't the best league in Europe, or that my league isn't the doesn't deserve it. I'm sorry, I'm a German. That's national pride. It's something. My Bundesliga is something I'm equally as proud of as Schnitzel and pommes frites and pommes Weiss and everything else that is pure Germanness. So
Schweinebraten's better though,
yes.
right?
Oh, you're in Bavaria.
Or Scheufele.
Yeah. Interesting to get your thoughts on that, Peter. Appreciate that, and it was a really good point actually in the comments as well. So thank you very much for raising that. I also do tend to think that change would be good for the Bundesliga, in that it's fairly inevitable in the sense of investment. Certainly, long have we had the odd discussions about how the Bundesliga as a league might change. So like the top four do a playoff and all that kind of jazz. But I think that's not the direction that the Bundesliga needs to be going into. But again, interesting to have the conversation and kind of talk about that. But alas, we'll revert back to match week 34 and we'll kind of now digress to the bottom end of the league, which had a lot of permutations possible before the start of play, to which is very exciting and a good day for some and a bad day for others, which obviously led to Schalke being automatically relegated back to the Zweite Bundesliga, despite their fine efforts in the Rückrunde, in the extended Rückrunde. They couldn't quite get past the hot stepping RB Leipzig side. Just starting with this game particularly, chaps, and we'll kind of move through the gears afterwards. I mean, for Schalke to go 2-0 down and then bring it back against Leipzig in the first place to get back to 2-2, although be it the second goal was completely gifted to them by the very generous Willy Orban. It just shows how far they had come, because, this was a team that were relegated long time ago in our kind of eyes, when we went to the World Cup break particularly. But, came up against an inspired Christopher Nkunku, who wanted to put on a show before he left the Bundesliga shores as well. So there were quite a few goodbyes for lots of big and important players of the Bundesliga. But Mark, obviously we were watching it unfold and we were thinking when it went to 2-2 particularly, you're thinking, wow, I mean, Schalke get the next goal here, they're gonna jump above my boys and relegate Stuttgart. So incredible effort, but just falling short on the day.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a great effort from Schalke, but I always said it was going to be a monumentous task to defeat this. Probably, in my opinion, the form team of the Bundesliga in the last 7-8 weeks, probably RB Leipzig. Congratulations to Christopher Nkunku, by the way. He managed to share the top scorer as well with that last-minute goal. Obviously, a really nice chip over the goalkeeper for the fourth goal, which obviously effectively sealed Schalke's fate, but it also ended with I would say a deserved share of the top scorer, because he's been brilliant the last 3 years in the Bundesliga. He deserves to go down in history. Obviously, Nico Füllkrug wasn't particularly happy because obviously he missed a lot of games injured, and then that last second goal effectively stopped him from winning it outright. But he still also gets a share of the prize as well. So congratulations to them. But yeah, as for Schalke, I mean, it was such a sad story, really, the whole season, because, they fought so well under Thomas Reis, but just injuries again to the defense. Mercedes Jens, he was so good, wasn't he, for so long, but he ended up getting injured again, although his replacement, Kaminski, did get them back into this game, to be fair, so congratulations to him. But I think I was saying to you, Rory, that basically at 2-2 with about 20 minutes to go, basically Schalke have to push to win the game. At that time, they knew that basically they couldn't get out the bottom three, but a winning goal would relegate Stuttgart at the time. But it was always going to be hard because there's just too much quality in this RB Leipzig side who, I can really see winning the Bundesliga next year, Leipzig. I really can. But anyway, that's beside the point. Obviously, Josip Poulsen, we've not seen that much of him this season, but he's a bit of a cult hero, really, at Leipzig. Obviously, he's been with them since the lower leagues, the Danish international. He got probably his biggest moment of the season, really, scoring the winning goal in this match. Yeah, that was obviously the end of them. They couldn't come back at that point. But I still think, I hope that Schalke keep Thomas Reis. I really do, whether he wants to stay at the club. I don't think there's been any specific information about that, but for me, I think they should keep him. I think he is a good manager. He's shown that. We saw it at Bochum last year when he had them comfortably in mid-table, and we've seen it again the second half of this season in the Runde with Schalke. I just think they got a bit unlucky. I think if they'd have had Mercedes Jens for the whole of these 19 games, they'd probably have stayed up, to be honest. I think Sepp Vandenberg has done pretty well too. I think it's just been injuries, too many suspensions, and that's ultimately what. Obviously, Kraus was also missing as well in this game. He's a key player for them, the ex-FC Nuremberg Klubberer. Yeah, I just think they were very unlucky. I would say that much about Schalke. The Hinrunde's relegated them. I think there's a lot of positives they can take. They're probably going to lose some key players. I think Kral has been linked with Union Berlin. I think it was actually, right? So they could potentially lose him. He's been really good in the second half of the season. Maybe Peter's favourite, Henning Matriziani, might end up leaving because he's become like a cult hero in the Bundesliga this second half of the year. He's come from absolutely nowhere to put in some brilliant performances over the second half. I wanted Schalke to stay up. In my opinion, they're one of the biggest clubs in Germany, probably one of the big 4 or 5 clubs in Germany. I would have liked to see them stay up, but unfortunately, it is going to be a second relegation in 3 years for the Kings Blue. Yeah, but unfortunately, what more can you say? Unlucky Schalke, but maybe next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if we then jump one place up before the start of play, so VfL Bochum were given or had a tough test as well, hosting Bayer Leverkusen. However, their task was made somewhat easier thanks to the outburst by Amin Adli early on this contest to really, turn the tide in Bochum's favour with that kick out, to which he received a straight red card. I think Leverkusen have had quite a lot of red cards this season. I think that was the second for Adli this season as well. But anyway, so they still had to do a job, versus 10 men, and they did so aptly, and got the goals at important stages during the match as well, to obviously see Leverkusen off 3-0 in the end and push them, higher up the league, and again a fine effort from this, Peter. I mean, Leverkusen is a tough opponent, 11 men or 10 men. But I mean, Bochum's test or situation was made somewhat easier by that moment of madness, basically.
Well, interesting to note that most of our relegation predictions from last week did actually end up coming true. I think all of us picked the Schalke to occupy the second automatic relegation slot, based on the fact that entering the match day against Leipzig, they stood very little chance. I think all tipped Bochum to stay up. My prediction that Augsburg would be in the playoff place on 34 points came also very close to being true. had your Swabians, had your boys only scored an extra goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think tactically, actually, Xabi didn't do a very good job compensating for Adli's red. And of course, Adli's red was a silly foul. You guys remember when we were talking about Adli getting the 2 reds or getting the 2 bookings for diving, and then VAR taking those back, that crazy match against Bayern.
Yeah,
Matchday 25. That was so that was one of the craziest occurrences of the season. Actually, the match that ended up costing Julian Nagelsmann his job, which defined the season in such a huge way. So, yeah, I mean, we expected Bochum to win at home. The red card came in the 9th minute. Alonso's tactical reordering, I think was totally false, and that's the reason that Bochum were able to capitalize and do so. There's an interesting thing to note about Leverkusen. A lot of people may not know this. They are not automatically qualified for the Europa League place. Based on the table, because if Frankfurt win the Pokal next weekend, the Leverkusen will be bumped down to the Conference League. So Xabi was mentioning in his press conference that he's 100% Leipzig fan next week. He needs Leipzig to win in order to hang on to the Europa League spot. Disappointing finish to the season from Leverkusen, but they made it all the way back up from where they were at the break. And we predicted as much, Mark and I did, when we did the first show of the calendar year, based on the fact that with Florian Wirtz, it's an entirely different team. So that's all there is to say about that. I think we covered everything except for why Stuttgart didn't score a second goal, which, Rory, that is your department. You have to...
Yeah, well, again, if we're kind of talking about perfectly summarizing seasons, that also kind of makes the statement about why does Stuttgart not score another goal. The reason why they are in the relegation playoff spot, they've not offered enough going forwards for long periods of the season. When you take Girassi out of the side, it looks entirely blunt. Obviously, Furyk was given the nod from the start because of his impact off the bench in Mainz, obviously in a fine performance that he put on. But also made me think that the kind of his energy might have been best suited to, again, be that impact player, whereas Thiago Tomas this time was the impact player because he got the goal. Although it was maybe a bit dubious in terms of if he fouled the player or not, the Hoffenheim defender. That obviously went to VAR, but the goal was allowed to stand. But even after that point, with all the momentum and goodwill in the world, Stuttgart were not, unfortunately, able to really carve out a really big chance after that. And the big thing is about Stuttgart, because they have had a habit of scoring late goals this season. We've seen it a number of times when we've been doing the odd watch along. I remember very well the time myself and Mark were doing the double watch along, and I was watching Stuttgart Hertha, and obviously Stuttgart scored really late on in the match to win it, and kind of felt like they might have been able to suck the ball into the net and do another version of their saviour against FC Köln last season, when obviously Legendo Wataru Endo scored in the last minute to keep them from the relegation playoff spot again. We can look ahead and talk about playoff matches and what that might come to and predictions and whatnot, which is all very horrible again. But yeah, it as I say, I think it just summed up our season, not being able to get that crucial goal at the time against the Hoffenheim side. That mathematically they weren't completely safe, but they were safe, and they still found a way to go 1-0 up as well. A good goal in the end by Bebu. Stuttgart had to score first. After that, I'm sure the job would have been billions times easier. to control the game in that sense. But yeah, they weren't able to, and that's that. They'll go into the relegation playoff place with at least more momentum than Hamburg. I can probably say that from a motivational standpoint. Obviously, from what happened in the Zweite on Sunday. So they've got to use that momentum and really charge at Hamburg and try and, get their foot on the throat and try and kill the game early, perhaps. Not that they score many goals anyway, though. So, yeah, that's my 2 pence for it, especially for match week 34 and the season from a striking point of view. Chaps, any other thoughts, theories? Do we want to do some horrible predictions about the playoff match as well, which will be not fun for me?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I think I was saying before kickoff, we started the show. I'm actually quite optimistic for Stuttgart. Actually, I think under Hoeneß they've been good. I really do. I just think, me and Petre did the watch along against Frankfurt a few weeks ago. In the first half in that game, I thought they were really, really good. They looked like a top half Bundesliga team to me at that stage. And for me, the result that's cost them is that one at Hertha. I mean, what were they doing there? They just didn't turn up in that game at all. Yeah. And they should have been able to win that game, and that would have kept them up ultimately. But for me, the second half of the season, they've been more like a mid-table side. I really do. I was lucky enough to see them live when they played Köln. They were really hot that day. They were fantastic, I would go as far to say. You don't see many games dominated from first minute to last, but Stuttgart were able to do that in that game. And I actually think it's been a real high-quality bottom half this year. I think that the quality compared to the last 2 years, it was a lot better in the bottom half. I think there's a lot of half-decent sides. I think even Schalke are a good side on the day. Augsburg, they finished the season appallingly, but for the first half, in the first 2/3 of the season, they were very solid, I think. And even Bochum at home, you don't want to go away to Bochum. They're a real solid team. Yeah. I think that, in a way, nobody deserved to go down. I'd say only Hertha are really poor. Yeah, they deserve to go down, definitely, despite the late resurgence under Paul Dardai. But I think, Stuttgart are a bit unlucky, in my opinion, to be in the bottom three. For me, I think they will win. I think they'll win both legs, actually. I'm quite confident for them. I think I would go for a 2-1 win at home on Thursday and then a 1-0 win in Hamburg next week. I'm going to go for a 3-1 aggregate win for your boys, Rory.
Crikey, that's good. Peter, do you share Mark's confidence? You back in VfB to hold out over 2 legs?
I'm concerned. I believe that highest foul. I mean, they've been fighting for promotion now for 5 years. Dino, they were actually the last Bundesliga side to ever be relegated from the top flight. When they were relegated these 5 years ago. I think they lead the Zweite Bundesliga with 70 goals, if I'm not mistaken, together. And they have a triplicate striker set with Robert Glatzel, the former Lautern and Mainz striker. This kid Königsdorfer and what's the other guy's name? Dompe. So they have a quality attacking set. Of course, when we talk about Stuttgart and the relegation playoffs, it's worth noting that Stuttgart were the last top-tier side to actually get relegated in the relegation playoffs.
Yes.
That was against Erste FC Union Berlin at the end of the 2019-20 campaign. As a matter of fact, I had some real nostalgia pangs when I was thinking about that match. I was just thinking back to Stuttgart in those days with Benjamin Pavard still playing for them, Gonzalo Castro. I don't even think he was captain at that point. And the first leg was awesome. It was a 2-2 draw. Mario Gomez scoring off the bench, if memory serves right. So that was a real classic old school Stuttgart side. I think it was a better side, a much better side than the one that they have now. So I would be concerned. I mean, look, perhaps we do a watch on because it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a extremely lot of fun. These are two rich tradition-based clubs with huge stadiums and great fan bases, and it's going to be an excellent playoff. So we shall see. But I'm concerned for your boys. If
you're concerned, Peter, can I draw out a prediction then, please? Would you be so bold?
Yes, I will be so bold. I will
Okay.
be so bold as to say that HSV take the playoffs, low scoring, 2-1 on aggregate.
Big call. Big call.
Are relegated. I will be so
I'll
bold.
call you out on that one, Peter, if it should be.
Oh dear. Right.
I'm wrong. And I don't, like any sports prognosticator, I don't want to be right. That makes life no fun.
Right. So, well, for my 2 pence as well, I'm going to back the lads to do the job. I'll go 3-1 as well. 3-1 over 2 legs. I never thought I'd say this as well, but can we get Dan Axel back as soon as possible? Because
yeah. He's turned out to be a cult hero, hasn't he, the last 4 or 5 games?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll say 3-1.
Day with that one, Rory.
And anyway, we'll move on because we've got about 15-ish minutes left, and probably still a few bits to cover, and we'll move on to what happened in the race for the top 4, the final top 4 spot, and we'll kind of glaze over the rest of the European spots as well. But yeah, the main race on Saturday was between Union Berlin and Freiburg for that coveted Champions League spot. Obviously, we now know what happened, but this was one that was topsy-turvy in the sense that Freiburg led in Frankfurt thanks to a back post header by Vincenzo Grifo. Also adding to his chances of nearly getting the top goal scorer, I think, because he ended on 15 goals, I think, and was really close as well. It was quite fortunate because the cross in from Roland Schalke was deflected or headed on by Tuta perfectly for Grifo to arrive to make it 1-0 in what had been quite a tense first half. I think only chances maybe for Kolo Muani, can't get my words out. And so at half time, they were leading and Union Berlin were drawing. So therefore, they were taking the spot. And Union pushed until Rani Khedira came up with the goods with a lovely finish, cool under pressure to put it in at the far right-hand post, obviously to put Union 1 goal ahead. This all then tied in with a very late comeback by Frankfurt, which the equalising goal was put in by Kolo Muani, a fantastic header, power header from, I think, a Kamada cross, which made it 1-1, which obviously wasn't good enough anyway for Freiburg. They pushed forwards trying to get that goal. I think Ritsu Doan and Grigorzic had chances themselves, and then Frankfurt hit the lead late on. Mbimbe getting on the end of a ball that fell his way inside the penalty box and making no mistake to make it 2-1 and take the top 4 spots and hopes away from Freiburg. Before we come on to Freiburg being runners-up in this race, shall we say, first of all, Union Berlin in the Champions League is just utter ridiculous brilliance. It's fantastic. What a story, representing East Berlin. Brilliant to see. And, they've done it their way. I think it's the best way of putting it. I'll come to you on this one, Peter, from an Union sense. The achievement, how can we put this in terms without going too over the top? But I feel a bit of over the topness is sometimes needed with these things.
Unfortunately, I left my prop from a couple of weeks back in the other room. I could, there's no sense in getting it now. This is obviously huge, and the fact that Rani Khedira scored the goal, I think, made it ever more special. It was actually a pretty rubbish match watching it, but look, people say, well, if Bayern keep winning the title, how is German football interesting? I do believe the story of Erste FC Union Berlin is incredibly interesting. This was the non-communist East German club. This was the club of Nina Hagen and Wolf Biermann. They have a wonderful stadium. I believe they were forced to play in the Olympiastadion the first year that they qualified for the Conference League, and then they were allowed to move the Europa League over to the Stadion Alte Försterei. But please put them in the Olympiastadion for the Champions League. Let's do it. I mean, we got 22,012 in Köpenick there, or we can have 80,000 in the Olympiastadion backing Union Berlin. It's all done. It was all done. It was a club that was built the old-fashioned way. Mm-hmm. Now, do Union Berlin have investors? Do they have sponsors? Yes and yes. Did Union Berlin back the financial reform that was defeated? Yes, they did. So did Freiburg. So these are, clubs that, all right, it's not, they have some money coming into them. That much is true. But really, it is the fans who make it happen. They own this club. They run the supervisory board meeting. And look, so Bayern won the title 11 years in a row. We got Union Berlin in the Champions League next year. Eisern Union. And, one of these days on these podcasts, I'm going to have to put some tunes on so that we can sing along. I will teach anybody who wants to learn it the Eisern Union anthem. I had the privilege of singing it with the fans back in 2007 when they were a semi-pro side playing in the 4th division. I will teach anyone. I will take anyone to watch that match. I absolutely will. Also excited to see Darmstadt and Heidenheim in the league next year. Take anybody to go see them as well. Take anybody to go see any Bundesliga match anywhere, anytime, because it is the best fan scene in all of world football, and it is, in my biased opinion, the best one and the best league in the world. So don't worry about Bayern winning the title, people. We got so many interesting storylines.
And there's some nice chat comments coming in from Bristol Funk, which is a great name. Just incredible. Union Berlin, hats off to them. Yeah, amazing stuff. Mark, and then do you want to just cover Freiburg? Of course, there'll be disappointment for Christian Streich and co. That they couldn't quite get over the line. They at half-time were there, but they couldn't quite hold on in the end, and obviously they lost on the day. And again, we'll kind of cover these teams in more detail in terms of their entire seasons, but just hats off to them for going against the grain again and proving to be a fine Bundesliga side, and they'll compete well in the Europa League again next season.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think for me, Champions League, it's not going to disappoint them too much because it's been another amazing season for Sport Club Freiburg. I think Peter mentioned Union Berlin, but one of the things I personally love about the Bundesliga is there's so many lovable clubs that just continue to punch way above the weight. I mean, obviously, Union Berlin are the top overachievers, but Freiburg are a very, very close second. And probably followed a little bit further down by obviously Mainz 05 as well. These clubs, if you look at the overall wage budget for the Bundesliga, these clubs are all way down in the bottom half of the budgets, and the fact that I think Mainz is second or third bottom of the whole league. But obviously focusing on Freiburg, they're round about the middle now, but only because of Europa League football last season. Really, I think probably 2 or 3 years ago they would have been down in 13th, 14th for the budget. Obviously now they've got the Europa Park Stadium, which helps them to get more people in the ground. They fill that every week. 40,000. That's been a great story for them as well, because when you first build a new stadium, you don't always know if it's going to work out, but so far it's been superb for them. The atmosphere is brilliant every week. The fans love it. Freiburg are just another brilliant story, and it's going to be fantastic to see them in the Europa League next season. Obviously, getting to the final of the Pokal last year, another semi-final this year. Obviously, they messed up that semi-final, but Christian Streich, and I just love the relationship that club has with it seems like such a family club, like they absolutely adore Streich. Like he could get them relegated to the Dritte Liga, and I think they'd still keep him as manager, to be honest, because they love him so much, like he's just a hero there.
Streich, I've referred to Christian Streich on this podcast as a national treasure, and I'm not exaggerating there. I mean, he's been, he came up through the youth system, so that's the only club that he's actually worked as a coach for.
Yeah.
He's been in charge since 2011. He is sort of he's the intellectual successor to the legendary Freiburg coach, Volker Finke. And an interesting note about Heidenheim, they were a consolidated club, and they had some help from a local business, a bank, I believe. But they are headed to the Bundesliga under only the second head coach in their history, Frank Schmidt, who has been in charge since 2007. So
I saw that the weekend. I was so shocked. 17 years. Wow.
Absolutely. So you have in Christian Streich and Frank Schmidt, you have two guys who are like the actual fatherly figures who have seen, have led this club and who have, groomed all of the young talent and seen them all through. That's going to be amazing in the Bundesliga next season, that we have two coaches that are so tenured.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'll just finish off then, last couple minutes, because Frankfurt, of course, Leverkusen, of course, they did lose to Bochum, but somehow held on to sixth spot. As we saw Wolfsburg throw away their lead, their early lead against Hertha, to eventually succumb and lose to the already relegated Berlin side. So I think we were talking off air about this, chaps, about obviously the permutations of the Pokal final. So Xabi Alonso is an RB Leipzig fan because obviously if Frankfurt were to win, it would knock Leverkusen into the Europa Conference League instead. So that'll be an interesting one to watch indeed. It would be, disappointing for Leverkusen to drop down a competition, but nevertheless, the job that Xabi Alonso has done since arriving has been very impressive, of course. Indeed, Wolfsburg are a strange side for me. I don't want to get too into this because just looking at time and stuff like that, but Niko Kovac, seeing his side go 1-0 up on the last day, trying to claim a European spot would have been encouraged just very quickly, Mark. But Hertha put up a fight for Pal Dardai in his, potential last game with the club. So impressive to see Hertha showing that fight, but very worrying for Wolfsburg to throw that sort of a game away.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to question whether Kovac is going to keep his job really now, because, for me, Wolfsburg have to be getting European football with that squad. Like, we've talked about the likes of Union and Freiburg and Mainz having small budgets and overachieving. Like, Wolfsburg are one of the teams that are underachieving. This is the second season in a row now. Obviously, they got Champions League in the 2020-21 season, they just about got Champions League, but European football is the minimum they should be aiming for, and that was just pathetic. Rid of that second half, to be honest with you. They knew if they won that game, they'd have finished sixth, and then there'd have been guaranteed Conference League and possibly even Europa League. But that would have been okay. Wolfsburg have had a very strange season, I'm going to be honest with you now. Like, Wolfsburg, at times they have been very, very good. Like, they beat Freiburg 6-0. They beat Hertha in the reverse fixture 5-0 in the Olympiastadion. They beat Dortmund 2-0 at home, and they were brilliant on that day. But I don't know. They're a very strange club. Like, the crowds haven't been very good this season for Wolfsburg. The stadium's been half empty a lot of the time, which is not typical. Obviously, we know that in the Bundesliga, I think most teams sell out every week. The Wolfsburg fans don't seem to be overly happy with what's going on at the club. I just think, is Kovac going to keep his job? My money will be on no, to be honest. I think they might fire him. And, we've seen them change coach a lot in recent years, especially since they lost Oliver Glasner, who was a bit more of a mainstay there. Obviously a quality coach, but, they went through 3 last year, and I think it's possible they might even end up with another one for next season. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I can see him getting fired, to be honest.
I agree wholeheartedly. I've said before on this pod that if he doesn't get Champions League football, he doesn't deserve to remain in charge of the club. His tactics have been too avant-garde. They've been too inconsistent. And Oliver Glasner is available. And he might be interested in coming back to Wolfsburg now that Jörg Schmatke is no longer there. So, yeah, I agree. I think it was just not acceptable. And they have to. We're going to see a few managers, as you call them, trainers as I call them, let go. Probably Fark in the next few days. Maassen may be in jeopardy if they can find somebody better at Augsburg. And yeah, I mean, obviously, if Stuttgart get relegated, well, no, they can't because they signed Hoeneß to this 2-year deal. Right?
We made the great foresight of signing him long term. Anyway, there's going to be lots of movement, and because the Bundesliga league season is over does not mean that the Bundesliga will go quiet. Of course, there's going to be lots of interesting moves from a head coach perspective, from player perspectives, and new heroes and villains for us all to celebrate and watch next season. So I think just finishing off tonight, just to say thank you to everyone that's watched this evening and throughout the season. We are not done. We have probably a couple more watch-alongs in us just yet. We've got a couple of, so we'll probably do a season review and an awards evening. They're always great fun to do from shows. See if we can get a couple of returning guests or kind of friendly faces on the show as well for those. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's been maybe my favorite season as well since starting doing the show. I think me and Mark were talking about this off air a while, the other day actually, and saying that, it's had a lot going for it this season. It's been great fun, and it went down to the last game of the season in many contexts. So yeah, been great fun. So I'll hand over to you, Mark, to finish up tonight's review show.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Like what a season it's been. Keep following the Bundesliga. There's so many exciting things to come. As Peter mentioned before, Darmstadt and Heidenheim joining us, potentially HSV as well. Who knows? But obviously, Rory will hope that doesn't come to fruition. But we'll see over the next week or so on that. So yeah, if you enjoyed what you saw today, check out at Over the Bar FB and at Over the Bar Extra. Don't forget to go to our main site, which is otbfootball.net. And also, obviously, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. But we are getting closer and closer to that big target of 1,000, which will be a big milestone for us personally and professionally. But yeah, keep trying to get us towards that. We've still got more to come, as Rory said, and we'll probably be going for the next 2 weeks or so, doing kind of sum up shows and things like that to keep you guys happy. So yeah, we don't know when the next show is officially planned for yet, but we'll definitely keep you in touch. Check out the Twitter to follow that. Yeah. So thank you very much, guys, and auf Wiedersehen from us.
Always a pleasure.